In these couple of lectures we're going to talk about the topic of synchronisation of estrus in cattle. This is a topic that's quite close to my heart because I've spent quite a few years of my life working on it and researching it, but I also enjoy doing these programs and working with farmers to try to tailor programs that might suit their needs. So it is quite a big topic. It's something that I'd like you to be able to understand so that you can apply the principles in your practices when you're working, and also understand when things go wrong or when treatments get misapplied, that you'll understand perhaps how you can rectify the situation or make the most of perhaps a situation that might not be going so well if protocols have been not appropriately followed. Here are some learning outcomes for these lectures. I'd like you by the end of them to be able to explain why you might want to synchronise estrus in cattle. You should be able to describe some of the physiological requirements to achieve precise synchrony of estrus and ovulation with normal fertility. Explain some of the advantages and disadvantages of synchronising estrus in cattle associated with various protocols. You should be able to state when prostaglandin F2 alpha is effective in causing luteolysis in cows and heifers. You should be able to provide advice on protocols for synchronising estrus in cattle. You should also be able to provide advice on a protocol for resynchronising estrus in recently inseminated cattle. One goal is for you to be able to read a protocol that can be used to synchronise estrus and explain how the protocol synchronises estrus and ovulation. You should also be able to outline a single prostaglandin based program, a double prostaglandin based program, a protocol that uses an intravaginal progesterone releasing device, and also a method that you could use to induce new wave emergence, and a method for inducing ovulation. So that's quite a big list of things. It's quite an important topic, I think, particularly if you're going to work in rural farm-based practices. We'll work together over the next 2 lectures to see if we can understand this topic a little bit better. There are some handy references that are available. Some of them are available online. There's a handbook that's available from the Ohio State University, and that's quite helpful, and it is worth a read if you've got the time to do it. Some of the principles, some of the protocols do apply to the United States, so some of the things may be less relevant here, but nevertheless the principles are still quite good, and that would be useful. There's also protocols that are available online, and you can see a group of protocols listed in various websites. The book by Parkinson, Yoss and Jacob Malmo, Diseases of Cattle, Chapter 11, does have a useful explanation of some of the protocols. And there's also a course you can do online through the University of Missouri that's available free, and it can be used as well. And there's a little reference that I've written quite a few years ago now that can be of some use. So we're going to talk about why we synchronise estrus. What are the characteristics of an ideal estrus synchronisation treatment? What are some of the principles for achieving a synchronised estrus with normal fertility? And then later on we're going to talk about the various protocols that you can use, or the basic protocols. Let's first talk about why you should synchronise estrus. Why would a farmer want to synchronise estrus? Well, it can be for a variety of reasons, but the main reason is to facilitate the use of AI and use that as a means of improving genetic gain within their herd. Synchronising estrus reduces the need for estrus detection, or confines it to a shorter period of time, which reduces labour costs. So instead of constantly detecting heat every day for weeks on end, you can reduce the amount of time. You can say, well, okay, the week after the next, for the next 5 days, you might need to synchronise, you might need to detect heat. Or in that group of 700 cows, we're going to basically inseminate them all on one day, or we may inseminate them over 2 or 3 days. Instead of taking 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to do it, we're going to do them all in a short period of time. It can also improve heat detection. If you've got a lot of animals coming in heat at the same time, it's much easier to work out which cows are in heat because they're riding each other and they're doing most of the heat detection for you. by synchronising estrus, you can get most of the cows, or not most of the cows, a lot of the cows pregnant on the first day of that mating is scheduled to commence. So if you've got a lot of the cows getting pregnant on the first day when mating is scheduled to commence, then they should calve relatively early the following year, which means that they'll have a longer lactation length. And so in a dairy herd they'll be more productive. They'll produce more milk per year because they're having a calf earlier in the year rather than later in the year. If they calve early in the year, particularly in a seasonal calving herd, this can increase the interval of time between calving and when they're required to be mated. And that can have a positive effect on pregnancy rates because the cows get more time to recover following calving before they have to be bred. If you're synchronising estrus and getting a lot of cows pregnant, then you're also to some extent synchronising parturition, and therefore facilities and management of, particularly in large dairy herds, drying off can be more focused. And so you can have, say, a 700 cow herd. If 400 or 350 cows all get pregnant on the same day, all of those cows will calve over a 2 to 3 week period. That means that you can organise the farm labour and say, okay, these days we're going to be really busy with calving a lot of cows, and so we need to organise our labour and so that we've got enough people on hand to cope with all those calves that are going to be born. And then when you can also work out the times when there won't be that many cows calving. And I know in the past I've drawn up spreadsheets for farmers and I've said to them, look, on these days I expect that you're going to get 40 calves per day or whatever. So you need to have enough labour on hand. And then at these certain dates you might only get 1 or 2 cows calving. So you can, if you want to have the weekend off, you can have some time off because you won't need as much labour at that time. And so I've been able to recommend to farmers how to organise their labour to cope with the expected increased workload associated with calving. If you're inseminating a lot of cows, then you can also increase the number of replacement heifers that are available for some herds. That replacement heifers, particularly in dairy herds, are usually drawn from they're usually derived from artificial insemination. So if you're doing more artificial insemination, or if you're inseminating more cows, then hopefully you'll get more heifers, and then that you can apply greater selection pressure and choose only the best for your herd. You can also sell the excess replacement heifers to other farmers or for export. If you're AIing a lot of cows, you may not require as many bulls as what you're used to, so that can save on some costs. If you're undertaking embryo transfer and you've got to synchronise a group of recipients, then it also facilitates the synchronisation of those recipients and the conduct of those programs. So a lot of reasons why synchronisation of estrus is undertaken on properties. What are some of the disadvantages though of synchronising estrus? Well, the biggest disadvantage is cost. Most of it requires some form of pharmaceutical treatment, and that there are costs associated with that. For example, in a beef herd, if you're just using a natural bull and selling the beef for just for hamburgers or whatever, it might cost you $20 a calf. But if you start doing AI and synchronising and you're using semen that costs $30, then if you're only getting 1 calf per 2 inseminations, that's already costing you $60 worth of semen for that 1 calf. So already you can see how the cost can go up. And if you put another $20 or more drug cost on top of that, it may cost you $80 per calf. Then you put a labour cost on top of that, and it might cost you $100 per calf, compared to if you just turn the bull out and it might cost you $20 per calf. So you can see how in a beef situation the costs may not be warranted. And the same within a dairy herd situation. It depends what the options are and why you're doing it. It doesn't always cost that much, but you need to bear this in mind and not over prescribe the use of synchronisation, because it may not be economically warranted. These programs require a degree of organisational and logistic skill. So farm managers need to be good managers. They need to know their bookwork. If a protocol is set out, then that protocol needs to be adhered to. and they need to have the facilities. It's no point having 700 cows come on heat over a course of 1 or 2 days and only having one crush to AI those cows. You just won't cope with it. You need to have more facilities to cope with that number of inseminations. You need to have enough labour on hand to cope with that. Cows need to usually be handled multiple times to implement the treatments. Conception rates with some programs can be reduced compared with, say, natural service. So you've got to be a little bit careful that the treatment protocol is not going to decrease fertility. Owners' expectations can be unrealistic. They'll read reports or they'll hear stories and they'll think, oh yeah, getting all my cows inseminated on one day, that'll be great. They'll all get pregnant. Well, they won't all get pregnant. And they need to understand that. They need to have more realistic goals. I've done programs at times where only 35% of the cows get pregnant. I've done protocols where 60% of the cows get pregnant. But it's variable, and you need to know that farm, know the protocol you're using, know the fertility of those cows before you can start making assumptions or estimations of how many cows are going to get pregnant. Another requirement is that the requirements for optimal reproductive performance still always apply. For example, if heifers are in poor body condition, then just because you're synchronising estrus, putting a bunch of drugs into them, inducing them to ovulate, doesn't mean they're going to be fertile. So you can never get away from that, and I need to stress this. So you need those heifers to be in good body condition, on a rising plane of nutrition. Preferably most of them are cycling at the time that you initiate the treatments. The same with the cows. If the cows are skinny, losing body weight, then don't expect good results from these protocols. You can't get good fertility out of a bottle. You've got to have the groundwork, the management has to be good, disease control needs to be good. All of those things need to happen. So don't just say, well, I'm just going to fix all the problems by synchronising, because it won't happen. And so I put this warning up just to remind us, me and others again, that fertility is dependent on many factors. Synchronisation of estrus is a tool that can be used to facilitate reproductive management. It will not necessarily improve reproductive performance on every farm. So just bear that in mind. Sometimes I've been to farms at times where I've sat down with the farmer inside and had food, sat down and ate food with them and talked about their program, and in the end I say to them, look, I think you're doing really well. I don't think you need to spend the money on synchronising these cows. Just keep doing what you're doing. I remember one farmer got me back a second year and he said, look, I'm keen to do this. And I said to him again, look, you've got really good reproductive performance, you're doing a good job with AI, heat detection, you're coping with the situation. I don't see any need for you to do this. But if they want to do it, yes, you'll do it. But there are times when you can recommend not to do it. Same thing, I've been out and they say, oh, we want you to do a protocol in these heifers, and I've gone out and I looked at the heifers and they're malnourished, severely malnourished, and I've said to the farmer, look, forget it. You just need to feed these heifers. It's just going to be a disaster if you proceed. So there are times when I've actually said to farmers, no, don't proceed with this program. This completes the first part of our section on synchronising estrus in cattle, where we're focused on why you would undertake estrus synchronisation in cattle and what are some of the advantages and the disadvantages. In the next part we'll talk about some of the principles of what the ideal synchronisation protocol would look like.